Okay, again, welcome everyone. My name is Ray Buchan. We're going to spend the next 60 minutes or so going through a presentation of Epicor Kinetic ERP, focusing on custom manufacturers and project-based manufacturers. Let me start off by walking through a few slides, and then we will dive right into the software. Just a bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, and if you do have questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute all the lines. So I'm going to do that now. You will have the ability to unmute yourself if you have a question, but we are expecting about 40 people today. So if you can put your questions in the chat window as we go through it, I'll make sure that I have time at the end to address those. All right, so without further ado, here's the agenda for today. Doing some brief introductions. I'm going to take you through a bit of an overview of the software. We'll look at a sample job, bill of material, and routing. We'll then get into the project management side of the software, and then really look at processing an order from quote to order through to manufacturing. We'll also talk about CAD integration and field service. And again, we'll have some time for Q&As at the end before we sign off. So again, my name is Ray Buchan. My background's in manufacturing and operations. I ran a plant in Brampton, Ontario for 11 years. It was a machine shop with some fabrication as well and some forging equipment and a few other things we had in the shop. I purchased an ERP system in 1997. And in 2002, I went into consulting on that ERP solution. I've worked with 3 different systems in my career and Epicor for almost 10 years now. So who uses Epicor in a project-based custom make-to-order environment? Hopefully you fall into one of these types of categories, but people that build capital equipment. So there might be thousands of components to track. There'll be multiple manufacturing jobs or orders to complete that project. People in aerospace and defense, high users of the project module. They need the overall visibility into a project. They need project costing, tracking R&D or shred claims, integration to Microsoft Project. They would have multiple quotes, sales orders, POs that are all associated to this overall project. Companies with heavy engineering requirements, tracking engineering costs against a structured work breakdown structure, integration to CAD in order to upload bills of materials and eliminate duplicate data entry, document management, attaching and associating drawings, pictures, or really any electronic file to the project to help manage that. People that have service requirements, such as construction companies or people that will build capital equipment and maybe go on site and install it or commission it. They need to track their field service technicians' time and expenses against the project. They want them to have mobile devices to enter those while they're out in the field. And then, of course, somebody to schedule and dispatch those technicians. And then finally, companies that are made to order or configured to order, where they would be looking at detailed takeoffs for estimating. They build something once, they'll never build it again. It's a pure custom or make to order job. And also configure to order customers. So where it's a similar product configured for the customer with some options and features. So moving along here, briefly about Epicor as a company. Been in business for 50 years, over 27,000 customers worldwide in 150 countries, about 4,400 employees, and Epicor is a $1 billion company. For the smaller companies that are online here today, don't let that scare you. We've got companies that are startups pre-revenue, to companies that are 2 and 3 users, all the way up to companies that are themselves $1 billion companies that may be 600 or 700 users. Very high growth rate in the cloud and a very high customer retention rate. If you look at any of the independent studies such as Gartner or Nucleus, you'll see that Epicor is considered a leader in the marketplace. Again, this is a Nucleus report that we're looking at here. And Success Partners. So we are the local implementation partner. So we have about 60 staff across Canada and the US. We've been in business for about 16 years, and we are dedicated to Epicor. So we sell, we implement, and we support Epicor Kinetic ERP. Really, our strength is our people. So our team are people that have worked in industry. They've used the software. They've decided to take a job in consulting. They're certified on the product to the same standards as Epicor direct employees, and they're the ones that are going to help you with best practices and recommendations. So, the implementation and training, it's really less about the point and click and learning the software and more about how is this going to work for your business, and we'll help you with that. Snapshot of our customers. We've got about 270 customers across Canada and the US. And some references in your type of industry, Alps Welding in Woodbridge, Ontario. So they build pressure vessels, and each one of these are custom fabrications. They're large vessels. You can see the one on the truck there. They use the project module. These are taking months to build, and when they ship them, they will go on site and help commission or install that. Unifab, based out of Leamington, machine enclosures, sheet metal shop, lots of cutting, welding, and fabrication. Exco Engineering, they are a heavy tool and die company, also project-based and big users of the CAD integration software. Prayer Machine, based out in Saskatchewan, Ontario, they are manufacturers of capital equipment. These are mines for mining equipment for the potash mines. Lots of aerospace and defense customers like Cascade out in BC. Again, lots of metal fabricators. JLR, they're a heavy configure to order company where they will actually take an order from a customer on the phone, ask them questions about what they're looking for, what options and features they want, and it will not only create the sales order, but actually release the manufacturing job to the shop floor automatically. So just a snapshot of some of the customers, some additional ones that are really more project-based. Pattison Sign Group, Athletica Sports Systems builds hockey rinks around the world. So they will design, engineer, configure, manufacture, ship the dasher boards for the hockey rink around the world and go on site and install them. Lots of automation companies out there as well. Again, more project-based, engineer to order. And this customer here is one that I visited. This is a number of years ago, and some of you may have seen this already. But this company is a great user of dashboards in Epicor, and you're going to see those today in the software. So what's a dashboard? It's a way of querying the information in Epicor and extracting it and showing it in a view that's helpful for you to run your business. Now, what you're seeing here in the bottom left-hand corner is an example of a flat screen TV that's out in a department in their manufacturing plant. And a close-up in the top right-hand corner shows that they're showing the customer ID in the first column, the job number that it needs to be worked on, the date it needs to be packed by, a paint code, and then the various operations or stages it needs to go through to get it completed and out the door. Now, they've also got rules built around this where the colors will change, which will provide information or an indication to people in that department. And these dashboards are updated through our MES stations or shop floor data collection stations. This is a bit of a dated version. You'll see a more modern version today, but the employees will put their time and quantities in here, and it will automatically update this dashboard. Another example of a dashboard over here in the top left. And in the bottom window here, you've got another example of a tablet running the MES station. And it's not only for the production side, it does a lot more. It actually helps in shipping and receiving and material movements as well. And here's an example of a dashboard that they would have out in the shipping department where it's showing the lines picked, the lines shipped, and the lines received. The reason you see 3 gas gauges is because they are running 3 companies, 3 legal entities within the same database, and they're tracking that all in the same dashboard. Another example of a project-based company is Northern Transformer. And when I met these guys, they were working out of a small industrial unit. They had taken over the other side, so they were now into 2 units. They had very high growth expectations, and they put Epicor in early. What it allowed them to do was it provided them instant visibility into the procurement status for all their jobs. It provided a closed loop costing analysis on jobs in real time. And again, it was a crucial stepping stone for them to reach their growth targets. If we have time today, I'll run a short video on them as a customer testimonial. But if you walk through their plant, they are a custom manufacturer. So on the left side of their plant is a metal fab shop. And in that shop, they're building these transformer boxes. So it's a lot of cutting, bending, welding. And then when you see here on the shop floor, would be possibly components that would go inside the transformer, parts that would help with the winding and so on. All of these, not all of them, but most of these items on the floor are bought to the job. So you can buy to inventory and you can buy to the job. And the topic today is about custom manufacturers. So most custom manufacturers or project-based manufacturers will buy to the job. Also great users of the dashboards. Here's a dashboard that they built where on the left-hand side, they see the jobs. They've got some color codes changing here based on the rules that they've set up. And when an operator or an employee clicks on a job, it will show additional information on the right-hand side. So you can design these dashboards to, any way that you like, that you can see that will help somebody in their daily role or help somebody on the shop floor or a department. From a functionality standpoint, I won't read through all of this, but I mentioned earlier that I've worked with 3 different ERP systems in my career. What attracted me to Epicor, almost 10 years ago was the embedded nature of the product. So I'm not saying that we will never use a third-party product, but Epicor has a lot of functionality in the core solution. Things like project management, things like warehouse barcoding, shop floor data collection stations, finite scheduling, product configurator. I could go on and on. These things, in my experience with other ERPs, a lot of the times are third-party bolt-ons. And of course, the vendors won't highlight that, but in fact, they are. So with Epicor, you'll find a lot of this is built right into the core solution. Some of the things we'll talk about today, product management, engineering, control, document management, CAD integration, product configurator, we'll show you that. We'll get into project management, advanced planning and scheduling, the MES or shop floor data collection stations. We can touch on quality and of course, the service side of the business as well. Everything is mobile enabled. So this is a more modern version. And again, I'll show you this in the software today, but this is the MES or shop floor data collection stations. And again, some systems will have this as an option or a feature, but usually they've got one purpose, and that is to track costs against jobs. So they, employees would scan on and off of jobs. Epicor's MES solution does much more than that. And we'll get into that a little later on. We also have Epicor Mobile Warehouse. This is an app. So rather than running out of a browser, this is an app that's downloaded. This basically does the same thing as the MES stations, except in this case, again, it's an app. And you can do labor tracking, material handling, shipping, receiving, production, and even proof of delivery. What you're seeing here is an Android device. It's a Honeywell CT40 scanner, but it will run on virtually any device. Other apps that you can look at on your app store, you can just search the word Epicor. You'll see one for sales and CRM, time and expense entry. And the last one here before we get into the software is something called Epicor Virtual Agent or EVA. And I compare that to Siri on an iPhone. So if you think about how you ask Siri a question, you can ask EVA a question. But instead of asking something over the web, you're asking EVA something about your business. So as an example, EVA, tell me about this customer, Addison. And she'll return that customer master file with a host of information. And of course, you can drill down from there. Maybe I'm on the road as a sales rep and I want to know if I have any of these parts in inventory. EVA, do I have any of these parts on hand? And she'll return that part master with the quantity on hand and so on. So that's Epicor Virtual Agent. All right, so that's it for the slides at this point. We're going to dive into the software now. And again, I'm going to start off with a general overview, and then we're going to dive into a sample job and then look at the project module and go from there. So from an overview standpoint, what you're looking at is something called a home screen. And every system that's out there does have a menu structure, and Epicor is no different. So if I wanted to, I could navigate, call it the old school way. And I could drill into, say, production management, and I could go into job management, and I could go into general operations, and I could find something called job entry. So if I am the person that's in charge of releasing jobs or work orders to the shop floor, that's the module that I need. Now, if I'm doing that on a daily basis, I don't want to click 4 times through a menu structure to get there. So what we do is we provide something called a home screen. And you'll notice that job entry is sitting right here for me. So now it's 1 click away instead of navigating through 4 clicks through a detailed menu structure. So each user in your company is going to have the ability to personalize their own home screen. And if you look at 5 different people demonstrating Epicor, you're going to see they all look different because we all like to personalize our home screen. Now you can lock that down by department if you like as a company, but let me just show you how easy it is as a user to modify that. So I can click on the edit button here, and maybe I don't get into quoting anymore. So I'm going to remove that from my home page. I no longer need that. And job entry is something I do every day. I'm going to drag that over here to my top left corner, and I'm going to make that a nice big tile. Maybe on the purchase order entry side, I want to change the icon or the logo or the color. Very easy to do that as well. If I want to add something that's not currently on my home page, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, I've got some graphs and KPIs and a list down below here, a grid view. I can add those from the inputs on the right-hand side. So an app link is a module. I could add the quote module back in here. I can add charts, dashboards. I can add images, which is the Epicor logo I have sitting up here. I can add web applications or outside applications. So if I'm a SolidWorks user as an engineer, I can have a direct link in here for that. If I'm in finance, I could have a link to my bank. So very easy to personalize this as a user. And the point here, or the business benefit, is that you're trying to make this as easy as possible for the end user. Whenever you see a grid view, like I have one down in the below window here, you can pop that out to Excel. So by clicking on the 3 dots here, I can say export to Excel. It'll take whatever's on that screen, dump it out to Excel. And it's very easy to not only export it, but also import it back into Epicor. Looking at it, just popping up there now. So you notice that it's not a CSV file, it's an Excel file that's maintained that same formatting. So again, very easy to export and import from Excel. We'll talk about data conversion, but there's many ways of getting the data in the system. That is one of them. Moving along here, across the top, you'll notice that I've got some tabs on my home page. If I click on this, you'll see that I've got some dashboards and KPIs set up. So here I'm looking at, in the left-hand side, our sales by month in the US. So it's cycling through and looking at our history of sales. It's showing me where we've sold, which states we've sold in, and the colors would indicate the amount that we've sold. So just another visual representation on how we're going to do that. I'm going to turn my camera off so that I don't block the top corner. So let me do that now, because I know it does that sometimes. Make sure you have the full screen. If I move across the top here, you'll see that I've got an aging dashboard. So yes, we've got aging reports. You can do real-time aging on a customer account at any time. But I've got an aging dashboard here where it's showing me my AR aging by customer with average and some additional KPIs on the right-hand side. Any of these dashboards that you see here, you can pop out. You can change the look and feel. Okay, and you can also slice and dice the information by using the filters. Now, you don't have to pop out the dashboard to do that. I can come back here to my main dashboard and apply the filters and say, well, I'm looking at my aging here, but I want to take away maybe my top 2 aging customers, Addison and Dalton. And you'll notice that all the numbers will change now dynamically. So very easy to slice and dice the information. And let's look at one more before we move on here. This last one here is an overlay of your warehouse. So this, we're very big on the visualization here. The concept behind this is, imagine these are production lines or machines on the top right-hand corner of your warehouse. And imagine this is inventory down here below. So from an inventory standpoint, you might have rules set up that say, if we have enough inventory, have it show up as green. If we've dropped below our safety stock, turn it yellow. If we're out of inventory, turn it red. Same on the production side. If we are meeting the standard or the estimate, show it as green. If we're below 10 or 15% or whatever your threshold is, turn it yellow. If we're below 50% efficiency, turn it red. The idea is, and think back to the dashboards that I showed you. You walk through your shop floor or you look at these dashboards on your system. When you see that visualization and that representation of something is wrong, it triggers you to manage that exception. So let's drill into it and find out what's going on here. I don't have to run reports anymore. I can see there's a problem here. Let me dig into it. So that's the home page. If I navigate down the left-hand side here, this thing here is called Enterprise Search. And think of it as a Google search. So think about how you use Google every day to find what you're looking for. Same concept, but this is searching everything in your database. And to me, this is a great tool for the infrequent users of Epicor, where they might not go in a lot, or maybe somebody's asking me to look for something in finance and I'm not a finance person. I can just search for it here. So whether it's a customer, an invoice number, a purchase order number, a phone number, a serial number, or a heat number on steel, anything, search for it just like Google. It'll find the information that they're looking for. This is a list of all the dashboards. I won't call that up at this stage. Scrolling down further, there's online help. So you've got videos, articles, and a guided tour to help you navigate through the software. And one other thing I'll mention here is that Epicor is a true multi-company, multi-site solution. So I can have as many legal entities or companies within one database as I want. I can do consolidations. I can do intercompany transactions. I don't have to set up the same part or the same vendor or the same customer in different companies. And from a site standpoint, I can have as many sites or locations within each company or legal entity. And just finishing off with the overview here, I want to talk about the notifications in Epicor and the messaging. So if anyone's using Teams out there, this will look very familiar. This works like Teams and works with Teams. So this is a system where I can send a chat to somebody and I can ask somebody a question. They can reply back and we can have a conversation. I can send it to a group of people like the engineering department and ask them a question. So it's a social type of chat window, but the real benefit in my mind here is that you can launch this from within any module. So let's use a quote as an example. So from within a quote, I can send a chat to somebody and I can say, hey, VP of sales, I think the pricing's pretty high here. Can you have a look at it? And he chimes in and says, well, let's get engineering involved and let's see if they can reduce the cost. And now we're having a conversation about this. And at the end of the day, we've decided to take this order for a 10% margin, which is way below what we'd like to do. But the history of that conversation is stored against that record, in this case, a quote. So whether it's a quote, an invoice, a purchase order, a sales order, or a project, that communication will be saved as a history item. So when you look back as to what or why you did things on that record, you will have that history. It takes away all the email noise that you experience today, back and forth, which is really a silo. That information is not shared. The other part to this is the notifications. And I'll show you some simple ones that I'm following right now. The first one is a customer has been placed on credit hold. So the idea behind this is, in the past, before we had Epicor, I had to rely on the finance people to tell me. They would email me or they would phone me or leave me a note on my desk saying, I'm putting this customer on hold. Well, no longer do you have to do that. Because I'm subscribing to this or following it, the second somebody in finance checks that box that says they're on credit hold, I get a notification. The other one I'm following is when a new job is created. So when a new manufacturing job is created, I get notified. When a quote has been expired or marked to be expired, I get a notification. I better follow up or do something with it. And there's a whole host of standard rules that you can follow here, and you can also create your own rules. Okay, and that's the last thing I'm going to show you here before we dive into more of the detail. So let's go back to the home screen and talk about a custom notification. And I'm going to do that through something called order entry as an example. This probably won't apply to anybody in the room, but I don't want you to get hung up on the specific scenario. I want you to think about the tool set and how you can embed your business processes into the system. So what I want you to focus on here is I'm just entering a customer. And I want you to focus on this field here called discount. And the rule that I've got set up says that we allow people to enter a discount, but nothing crazy. So if I type in 40% here, watch the top right-hand side of my screen. As a user, I'm trying to do something that we don't allow as a company. We're stopping that person in their tracks. We're yelling at them and we're saying, you can't do that. In this case, are you out of your mind? A bit of tongue in cheek there. Now I try to save this. It's now asking me for a reason. Let's raise best buddy. That's what we're going to say. We're submitting that for approval. It's now going out to my manager for approval. Now that approval can go a number of different ways. It can go as a notification through the social, the Collaborate tool, or it can go as an email, or it can create a task for somebody. Notice also that it locked the order down on hold. So it checked our business process. It says we do not allow discounts that high. It stopped me in my tracks. It yelled at me. It turned the field red. It told me I needed to get approval, and it locked the order down on hold, all automatically, based on me trying to do something that we don't allow. Again, the approval process, in this case, I'm going to do a send receive here in email. And what you're going to see here is that the system has sent my manager an email that says Ray's asking for a crazy discount. So the email just came in. It says order 5648. The discount's above 25%. Approval is needed. They're requesting 40%. The reason is it's Ray's best buddy. Now my manager can click on this link and go right to the order, or they could simply reply to this email and say approved. So maybe they're on the road, they're going to approve this, but they don't want to give me 40%. They're going to give me 2%, and they're going to send that back. Okay, so that's been approved by my manager on the road. And if I come back into Epicor now and look at the sales order, currently it's locked down on hold. It's at 40% and the field has been turned red. Now I could have a rule that says send a notification back to that user, but if I simply refresh the screen here, you should see it come off hold and move to that 2% discount. Okay, and that was directly from that email communication. So don't get hung up on this scenario. It probably doesn't apply to anybody on this call today, but think about estimating. When somebody creates a quote for less than 35% margin, we take action. Has to be approved. In manufacturing, when a job is scheduled to be late, I want to be notified. I want a push notification. I want it in an email, or I want a pop-up. You decide how you want those notifications. So that's something called Epicor Business Process Manager, or BPM. All right, let's now get into more of the nuts and bolts of the software. What I want to do is start off with a manufacturing job. And we're going to just look at how to create a bill of material, and then we're going to process an order. So I'm going to call up one that I've got in the system here, and we'll use this as a talking point. So this is a manufacturing job. And when I look at the assemblies here, so you see what we're building. It's a DCD 200 ml. It's a multi-level frame assembly. And what I want to show you is just the structure of the bill of material and how to create that in Epicor. Being an operations manufacturing person, this is near and dear to my heart. At any time in Epicor, you can just roll your mouse on your wheel and make things larger or smaller, okay, because it is browser-based. Let's go ahead and look at the engineering here. And if I expand the tree view, what you'll see in Epicor is that you've always got this tree view, and then you will always have a detailed view or a list view on the right-hand side. So a simple bill of material, if I click on this, I see it in a list view. Okay, more of an Excel spreadsheet, and I can pop this out to Excel and I could add 20 items and bring it back in. I also have a detail view, so I can either click on that bolt, or I can click on the tree and I can see the detail behind that item. So this is a 5/16 bolt. It's back flushed for an inventory transaction. The quantity is 8. The unit of measure is eaches, and the cost is 3 cents per bolt. So that is a material card. I've also got an operations card here. And under operations, if I do the same thing, I'll see my 3 labor operations, and I can see some of the information on the grid view here. And just as a sidebar, any of the screens that you see here, you can turn fields on and off at ease, and you can save your own personalized layout. So here's my 3 operations. And if I click on the assembly operation, I now see the assembly operation, and I can see that the rate of production in this case is 10 pieces per hour, which can be defined a number of different ways. So if it was welding or engineering, I would probably have it as fixed hours. I also have sub-assemblies. So I can open up the tree here, and you can notice that I've got 2 sub-assemblies here. So here's the first one. This is a bracket, and the second one is a frame. And if I expand the tree on the second sub-assembly, you'll notice that it's got its own bill of material. In this case, it's just a piece of stainless steel. And the labor operations gets a little more detailed, where I'm looking at punching the part, forming it, deburring, and then I've got an outside vendor heat treating. If I zoom in here a little bit, you'll notice that the icons on the operations, they all mean something. I've got an exclamation mark, and that material is red. That's a constraint for me. I don't have that. These operations are all internal, and this one is an outside process. Okay, so it's a visual representation when you're looking at this as well. And this subassembly, if I drill down even further, has its own subassembly as well, with its own bill of material, and again, its own labor operation, in this case, saw, turn, and drill. So it's an indented bill of material structure. And how do you build that? So it's very easy to build it. Now you can do it one by one, slowly, the hard way, or you can do it the easy way. So if we focus on an operation, I could right click and I could say, add a new operation. I could select my resource, and I could give it an estimate or a rate of production. I can right click on materials and do the same thing, add a new material. So I could do this one by one, but of course, as you can imagine, that's quite slow and methodical. If I go to the engineering tab, I could add my bill of material through my parts here. And I could look at putting on filters, which is a common feature throughout the system. And maybe I say, I'm only interested in stainless steel at this point. So I use the filters, I find the stainless steel I'm looking for. And yes, I need those 2 components, and I drag and drop it, and I put it wherever I need those materials. So you can search the database, query the database, find the materials or operations you're using, and you can drag and drop and put them on there. The third way, and I'll show you this in estimating, but in manufacturing, it's the same thing. The third way is I can right click and I can do something called get details. And what that is I'm going to copy something that we've done before. I can copy a previous quote, a previous manufacturing job, or maybe it's a template. I can copy that and bring that structure in, and then I can modify that structure. So it's that same as, but different. And then the last way is through CAD integration. And I'm going to touch on that briefly here. So the CAD integration, before I do that, getting information into Epicor is quite simple. Number one, you can copy paste. I showed you exporting. I didn't show you importing, but I can copy paste directly into Epicor. Epicor also has something called a data migration tool. I can upload an indented bill of material from Excel into Epicor with a one-way push. So that's all great. It's easy. It's fine and dandy. The CAD integration, what this is doing is something a little bit more than that. So here I've got a 3D model in SolidWorks, and the CAD solution really doesn't matter. But you'll notice that the plugin here allows me to upload that bill of material. And when I run the CAD link, what it's going to do is it's going to look at that 3D model. It's going to look at all the sub-assemblies. It's going to look at all the components, and then it's going to compare it to Epicor. And it's going to say, you know, what do we have in SolidWorks? What do we have in Epicor? And let's compare it. Because, you know, a challenge for a lot of companies is engineering calls something one way and production calls something the same thing, something different. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at here, cycling through those sub-assemblies, the components, and it's going to return a view that's going to give us that analysis. So here what we're looking at is the indented bill of material, and it's showing me that anything in white already exists in SolidWorks and in Epicor. It's in both systems. Anything in green is going to be brand new, that's been added. So it's going to be added to the bill of material in Epicor. And anything that's in white with a yellow highlight means that, you know, this stainless steel spring here is in both systems, but there's a discrepancy in the description. So engineering is calling it spring steel material, and Epicor, or in production, are calling it a spring steel MTL. They've shortened the material word. So what it's saying here to the engineer is pick one, make them the same. All right, so that's the CAD integration piece, and the real benefit here is, you know, for companies that are doing multiple revisions and partial releases, you know, with thousands of components, this really is a must-have, keeping both systems in sync. If you've got a fairly simple bill of material, you can just upload that through Epicor, or you would build it right within Epicor itself. So different options there. All right, moving along here, let's go ahead and start processing an order. And we are going to go to the quote module. And we're going to open that up. And we're going to look at an existing quote, just watching my time here. There's a lot to cover in a short period of time. So I'll try to keep this fairly high level and make sure that people understand the process flow. So here we're looking at a quote 1187. And if I scroll down, I look at the details here and I scroll down, you'll see that I've got some line items on this quote. So I've got 4 line items, and in Epicor, there's different ways of quoting. Number one is if I'm selling, say, a replacement part, I could type in the part number, and if there's a price list, it'll show up on what I should be quoting. If it's a custom build, number one, and also a differentiator with Epicor, is the fact that you do not have to create a part number in Epicor. Okay, so I can quote something, I can build something, I can ship and invoice something, all without having to set up a part master file. Okay, so if you are a pure custom manufacturer and you build things once and will probably never build it again, you do not have to create part numbers in the system. So that's a custom build. Standard fabrication might be something that's, you know, same as but different. And then we've got a configured item. So let's look at a couple of quick examples here. If I enter a new line here, let's say it's Ray's custom part. Okay, that's all we're going to call it. So I'm not setting up a part master file. I'm just calling it Ray's custom part. And we'll do the same in the description. We don't have pricing. We don't have anything on this. We have no information on this whatsoever. But I've got a drawing in front of me with a takeoff, and I want to build this up. So I can look at this and say, I want to do some engineering behind it. I want to add a bill of material for my cost. I want to add some labor to it. So because I'm highlighted on that, I'm going to click on engineering, and it's going to take me to the engineering tab. And here you'll notice it looks very similar to the job. So I could add my materials, I can add my labor operations, and this is all part of the quote. What I'm going to do, though, is what I showed you earlier. I'm going to click on the Get Details button. I'm going to copy it from a template, a previous job that we've run, or a previous quote that we've done. So I've got different options there. So let me go ahead and do a template or a method, and I'm going to call up something that I've got in the system here. And I'm going to select revision B, and I'm going to bring that in. So I'm going to copy that existing structure from that template, and I'm going to bring it into my quote, because this is similar to what I'm trying to quote here. But when I start looking at this, I say, well, I don't need that material. That doesn't exist. So let me get rid of that. And maybe I need a new material, or maybe on the labor operations for assembly, you know, it's the rate of production is higher than what we were looking at before. So in this case, looking at assembly, it's 10 pieces per hour. I could say maybe it's 10 hours per piece. That'll change the price by quite a bit. Okay, so I've done that. I've added the line. I've done my engineering behind the scenes. I come back to the quote, and now I can look at the cost structure on that. And the way we do that is looking at something called a worksheet. And here we're now analyzing our costs based on labor and materials. So I've got a summary up at the top. And as I scroll down here, I can see my costs in the various cost buckets. And I'll see the totals down here. So my total cost for that raised custom part is $1,440. I'm applying some markups here. And then I've got a suggested selling price of $1,872 sitting right here. I'm paying a sales rep 4% commission. So my total suggested selling price is $1,947. Now, what you quote is entirely up to you. Okay, I can quote this for $3,000 if I like. It's entirely up to you, but you're looking at the cost structure and then you're applying the markups. And of course, we do have price breaks as well. So if I was to add a price break, if somebody says, give me a price on 1 and give me a price on 10, we can do that as well. So now when you look at the unit cost as an example, so previously, if we build 1, our unit cost is going to be $1,440. If we build 10, our unit cost drops to $916, and that's because it's amortizing the setup times and the burden and so on over that quantity. So that's quoting in a nutshell. A configurator, I think it's probably worth showing you a quick example of that, just so you get a sense for those of you that are in that configure to order space. If I click on an existing item here, I'm going to click the configure button. And this is again as if we build something that's you know, the same type of model, but a different product or different options and features. So here I'm saying I'm building 5 of these beacons, and I can change the lens color if I like, and the image will change. I can change the bulb type if I like, but I need to select the voltage. So if it's a 12 volt, I've got options here. If I select a 24 volt, I don't have options. It automatically defaults to an LED. So this is a rules-based parametric configurator. If I want to add a mount, it gives me options to add the mounting here as well. So that is building that cost structure in the background for both labor and materials. Okay, let's move on. A couple of highlights before I move off of quoting. You can simply take this quote and convert a sales order. You can also not only create the sales order, but you can flip it right into a manufacturing job. So if you've done the work up front, you can push that through to a sales order with no rekeying. And if it made sense, also create the manufacturing job in a firm status. The other thing that's worth mentioning is if I look at one of the line items here, that we have something called a what if schedule. You know, the question in quoting and estimating is usually, you know, how much and how soon can I get it? Well, we talked about the costing. Now we're talking about the delivery date. So if I start this on Monday and I build one of them and I schedule this finitely, how soon can I get it? That's the question that we're asking ourselves. Now, obviously, you have to be using the scheduling engine within Epicor. But from an estimating standpoint, this will give you a good guide as to the completion date. So in this case, I came back with the same day. So it's a 1-day production. All right, we've got the order. We've configured that. We've created a sales order in the system. For those of you that are in a project-based environment, at this stage is when you would probably create the project. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. So going back to my home screen, I'm now going into project entry. And let's call up an existing project. It's a capital machine project here. And let's just start with a couple of buckets of information. The contract information is sitting here on the project. The details of the project are sitting here. And I can see it's a capital machine project. I've got a start date. I've got a work breakdown structure. So this is entirely up to you. You don't have to use it, but in this case, I've got a structure that has design, engineering, which is also broken down into subphases, into mechanical and electrical. I've got manufacturing and installation. So that is a work breakdown structure. And moving along, we've got milestone billing. So we can set up milestones or progress billing where at design completion, billing will automatically trigger an amount of $5,000. Okay, then we've got some other phases as well that we're going to look at. Project costs are all here as well, and also revenue recognition. So I'm navigating by expanding these cards here in this main view, but I can also navigate down the left-hand side. So let's talk about project costs. So a project cost is showing me the quoted amount, the estimate, which means we've got the order and here's what we are expecting, the actuals as we report labor and materials, and then the cost to complete or the calculated cost to complete, and also the projected total. And it's comparing that all to our budget. Now, I know not everybody on this call will be using the project module, but just from a conceptual standpoint, a manufacturing job is one thing. A project, think of that as the overarching umbrella that will contain everything to do with a larger project. So if I start to walk down the left-hand side on the tree here, you'll see that I've got related information. I've got related sales orders. So all of these sales orders or line items are part of this project, this contract. What quotes do we have in the system that are part of this project? They're all tied together. What jobs, what manufacturing jobs are tied to this project? Here's that multi-level frame assembly that we were looking at in detail. That manufacturing job, that one job to build that frame assembly, is part of a bigger, much bigger project. What POs do we have out there that are part of this project? So you know, think about a project as a one-stop shop for drilling down and finding anything and anything you need to know about that. You know, if I wanted to know who welded a gusset on that frame, you know, I can just come to the project. What project did it have to do with? I can find the manufacturing job. I can drill down to the operation. I can drill down to the labor ticket, and I can see that Bob welded that gusset on November 1st at 3 p.m. Okay, so it's a one-stop shop to drill down for all the information you need to know about a project. Moving down, we've got the WS phases. I talked about project costing at the upper level. You can also look at the work breakdown structure and the cost at the work breakdown structure itself. So here I'm looking at the first phase, and here's a breakdown of the costs at that phase. And that was design. So what about manufacturing? How does that look? I can click on that phase and it will show me the how we're doing on the manufacturing side. So that's the benefit, one of the benefits of having those work breakdown structures or phases in the project. You can segregate the costs and see how you're doing in each area. And we talked about milestone billing. So here I've got a number of milestone bills, and if I look at the detail behind that, as an example for design completion, we can say that, you know, when it's complete, the billing that's going to happen is that we are going to send them a bill for $5,000. Now note that finance doesn't have to know that. It's the engineers, when they complete this task, it automatically triggers the billing on the finance side. So they don't have to ask anybody. This is part of the standard workflow. Okay, and then on the activity tab, You've got some additional information, summary information about the project. You can look at the detailed hours if you want here and see how you're doing estimate to budget. So again, think of this as your one-stop shop for those larger projects. All right, watching my time here, I'm running out really fast. I don't want to have people stay over, but let's jump over to manufacturing and see if we can expedite this a little bit here. Let's go back to job entry. And let's look at that job 2471. And we talked about the structure here. We talked about the assemblies and the detail behind that. What I do want to show you is looking at document attachments. So let's just refresh that. And I'm going to go and look at the little paper clip here. Whenever you see that, this is a common feature throughout the system. Epicor allows you to attach and associate any document to any application. So in this case, we've got drawings and videos and additional things attached to a manufacturing job. So I'm just going to download these and have a look at them and open them up here. And what you'll see is these two files are attached to this manufacturing job. They can be attached to the operation. They can be attached to an inspection plan. And it's really any file you want can be attached and associated not only to a manufacturing job, but anywhere throughout the system. And of course, these are all visible on the shop floor devices. From a scheduling standpoint, we do have a scheduling engine that runs automatically. You can schedule a project. So we didn't get into that. You can schedule an individual manufacturing job. I can do it forwards or backwards. It does default to a backwards direction for just in time. And you have different options here, whether you want to do finite capacity planning or push this to a what if schedule before you commit to those changes. You can say when I want it to start. I want it to start on Monday and click OK, and away you go for the schedule. Once that job is scheduled, you can view that on the scheduling window. So I'm going to go to the job scheduling board and we'll look at this one individual job and we'll view that in a Gantt chart view. And we can see the start and end dates here, and we can zoom in and out of here. So I can go to weeks and I can move this over and I can see the entire job here. And I can also expand this and I can see the detail behind each subassemblies, and I can also see the constraint or the critical path based on the red cube here. And you can again drill down this to days, hours, minutes. It's entirely up to you on what kind of detail you want, and you can also roll your mouse in and out to see that view. So we do have a number of different options in scheduling. This has been a very high level look at it, but hopefully that gives you an idea. It is drag and drop, so I can manually manipulate the schedule as well and make those changes in a what if scenario, or save that as a separate schedule itself and compare it. I want to look at the shop floor data collection stations here. Now this is running typically on a tablet. It can be really on any device. Any of the screens, because this is browser based, will right size themselves to fit that device. We'll just pop this back up here for a second and do a full screen. I've already logged in as this employee, John J. Labor. And what I didn't do on the manufacturing job was print a paper job traveler. So some companies still like to do that, and that's fine. It's really a business process decision. But a lot of companies will not print travelers, and they will provide the employee with a work queue. Okay, so the work queue, as an operator, I log in and I say, what am I working on? I click on the work queue, and it's going to show me all the jobs that are upcoming in priority for me to work on. I no longer have to look at a paper traveler. I can click on that. I can view the details. I can look at the documents, the videos, the drawings, and so on. And when I'm ready, I can select it and I can start the activity. So I can start my production. Okay, so that's one way of doing it paperlessly. Other options here on the MES, set up production. I can do indirect work, I can do rework, I can track downtime on my machines. This operator is currently clocked into 2 manufacturing jobs, and we've given him a whole host of options here that he can use. Now, most companies will simplify this and just have a few buttons on the screen, but I've got them all turned on right now because I want to show you the capabilities, including things like an operator entering a non-conformance. They can do material issues, receipts, returns. They can do shipping, receiving from these devices. A lot of companies will have a Bluetooth scanner tied to the tablet. There's a supervisor tab, which will track employees, who's working on what, who's here, who's not here, and so on. So again, very quick synopsis of the shop floor MES station. And I really want to finish off here with the purchasing, and then we're going to call it a day and take questions. So on the purchasing side, I'm going to go back to my home screen here, and I'm going to go, obviously we have purchase order entry. I can create a manual PO at any time, but I'm going to go to something called new PO suggestions. So what this is the output of MRP. And, you know, a lot of companies will say, look, we're a custom shop. MRP is a dirty word. We don't do MRP. That's fine. It's still going to assist you in how to buy your materials. So I've got a list of everything that the system is telling me to buy. Okay, I don't have to look at a printout report. I don't have to walk out in the back and physically check inventory. The system is looking at all the supply and demand. It's looking at the planning parameters like safety stock, min-max order quantity, and so on. And it's coming back to me with suggestions on what I should buy. So these are all suggestions. The process to release it is, first of all, I have the opportunity to change things here if I want. These are suggestions only, but I could create the PO, and I could also change it at the PO level. Now, I can simply check on the flag that says buy, or maybe create an RFQ. And if I click on the button up here, it will turn the suggestion into a PO. So that's the basic process and principle behind this. Now, as a buyer, I don't want to look through a random list of suggestions. I want to look at this in a way that makes sense for me. So the first thing I might want to do is in a custom environment or a project-based environment, I might want to turn on the filters. And I might want to say, I want to filter this by job. So let me filter this by job 2117. Just show me all the materials that I need to buy for this job. And there they are. The next thing I want to do is I want to do it by supplier. So I could type it in here as I just did with job, or I could drag and drop supplier name up here and start to do a bit of a pivot table. So let's, what are we doing here? I'm a buyer. I need to buy everything for this job or this project. I sorted it by that job. The next thing I did was sort it by, or group it by supplier. So now I've got 2 components that I need to buy from ABC Electronics. I've got 2 to buy from ABC Metals and a whole bunch of stuff from Ethan Industrial Supply. So this saves me creating, multiple POs for the same vendor and so on by filtering and sorting and grouping what I need to buy and when. All right, that was really the main topics that I wanted to cover. I'm going to jump back to close things off from an implementation standpoint, and then I will open it up to questions. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. And, from an implementation standpoint, how do we get this up and running with you? We follow a 5-stage methodology. This is an Epicor methodology. And the prepare stage is when we're learning about your business, you're learning about the software. We define the scope of work, who's responsible for what, and the objective really is no surprises when we launch this project. The plan phase is we will have a kickoff meeting. We'll do a deeper dive into your processes, and we'll create a project plan in conjunction with you that's reasonable, so that your employees are not overburdened or overwhelmed with the amount of work on implementing an ERP. The design phase is where the bulk of the time is spent. We're hands-on working with your team. Most of it is on site We do a lot remote, obviously, through COVID as well. We did a lot remote. And we, help you configure and modify your business processes, recommending best practices. Lots of testing, lots of proof of concepts in that phase. And then the validate stage is that end-to-end testing where we're more of a facilitator watching you process quotes to orders, setting up projects, all the way through to collecting cash on the finance side to make sure that everybody is happy with what they see and how it works. And then we will make a decision whether or not to go live. And of course, the more testing you do, the easier it is when you walk in on that Monday morning with the new system. We do support you after go live. We don't wish you luck and take off. We're always there. We're always looking for a customer for life. And part of every implementation is to support you after go live, including your closing off your first month end. One thing that's different from other vendors that I've seen is that our team receive a bonus based on you going live on time and on budget or under budget. So there is an incentive for our team to make this happen within the budget or even better, below budget. So next steps, Q&As. If you like what you saw here today, we'd be happy to come on site and do a discovery meeting at your office, further understanding your business needs and requirements, gather sample information, come back and do a demonstration, which is really a simulation of your business, focusing on your specific requirements. We'll do a quote proposal, highlight any government funding if there's any in your area, and of course, provide local references. So at this stage, I'm going to look at the chat window to see if we have any questions. Feel free to turn on your mic if you like and chime in, but my contact information is there on the screen. I look after the East, and Royce Gonzalez is the sales executive in the West in Canada, Mason Smith in the US, and John Pridich is our president, who's always available. Okay, so looking at the chat window. And so, sorry, the first question from Leon, will you show the finance side? Unfortunately, Leon, I've kind of run out of time here. So I don't have time today. If you want to hang on, I'm happy to give you a bit of a walkthrough. The only thing I talked about on finance was the fact that we are a true multi-company, multi-currency solution. I'm going to stop the recording at this point, but we'll carry on.